Yeah. Hi, Mary Ann. Yeah. Is my name there?
All the way down, there you are.
Here?
That's you.
Oh. Got moved down.
Order the Curriculum and Student Development Committee. I'm Steve Penn. I'm joined by other members of the committee, Kathy Miller, Mary Ann Connolly. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, and my understanding is we have some items on our agenda today that are of particular interest. Particularly to
Very interesting. Sorry. Thank you so much. So thank you for your time this evening. This is kind of perfect timing. We had planned this session to be on this topic some months ago. So quite timely after the board retreat. So we're excited to be here. And I'd like to welcome Selena De Silva. You've met her before, seen her before, head of the English department at Daniel Hand High School. And Selena has worked with Pete and I on putting together a presentation for you to really look at the use of AI and what the high school has been doing or is doing as we continue to learn more about artificial intelligence. So I'm going to turn it over to Selena.
Hi, I'm Selena De Silva, English teacher and program coordinator at the high school. The way I kind of structured this presentation was to think a little bit more share a little bit more about my department's philosophy and our approach, and then think about what the students are thinking, and then thinking about the different capacities with which we can use AI. Because I think I can speak for all teachers when I say the spectrum of comfort is exceptionally wide. Because some folks have played around with it, some folks are terrified of it, and I think we have to fall kind of somewhere between. So to start, this last year we kind of thought about how can we approach AI in our classroom, because for high school students, if you avoid it, they're going to find it, and if you tell them no, they're going to use it. So we wanted to find a safe zone of how can we think about encouraging the use in appropriate ways, and just show them how AI can be nefarious and can be dangerous for them to use. So at the end of last year, we researched some policies on AI use and plagiarism and academic integrity amongst other schools and some of the local colleges and universities. And we kind of drafted what we wanted our stance to be and how we wanted to have our approach. And then at the beginning of this school year, we kind of referred back to that and let the summer kind of clear our minds. And we came together on one of the first few days of professional development and crafted these statements. So we are mindful that when we are communicating to both our we're communicating to both parents and students. So we created a stance on academic integrity that we wanted to include AI in that kind of umbrella. And then we also wanted to speak specifically to AI platforms to generate work. So we have one that kind of focuses on speaking directly to the parents. And then we have another one that we plan on using for our rubrics on our Google Classrooms on assignments. So when I post something on Google Classroom, I will post this as well. If we're adding it to rubrics as we go, because we want kids to understand that when they turn in work, they are being held accountable for honest work with integrity. And we really felt strongly once we kind of crafted this, we wanted to reach our incoming freshmen who are terrified walking into the high school because it's a brand new world. And we also wanted to make sure that we were reaching those the highest level seniors who are taking AP Lit. So we wanted to make sure it spanned all of the grade levels and all the abilities. And just just in terms of some preventative measures, this is just something that we're thinking about as we live in this world where students are playing around with things, and as high school students, they're always pushing the boundaries of morality. And we just wanted to share that there are some preventative measures that we've been using previously. So Google Docs, Google Classroom, this allows us to have easy access and open access to student work. In previous years, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Google came out with their originality report, which students can run and we can also run to ensure that that their work isn't detected on any other websites or any other books. Recently, we got access to Google Draftback, which is an extension that allows you to see keystrokes. I've used it this week and it's probably one of the coolest things I've seen in a while. You can play a video that watches the student as they type. It's the coolest thing ever. There are also AI detection sites, but just like AI, it's constantly evolving and changing. So right when you think you have something that works, it becomes outdated. So those aren't perfect. It's just one of the additional measures that we would use, just like looking at previous work and writing. When we're looking at our students' work, we have a sense of their voice and their ability. So that's kind of our last measure of, hey, does this fit the baseline of the student? And if it's not, that's when we would start to consider other avenues of, is this their work or not? In terms of our work this year, so we have the syllabus work and we have our stance that we created. We also are really pushing to have beneficial, productive PLCs that occur more regularly in the past at the high school. And one of the ways that I wanted to encourage professional development and personal learning was to create interest-based PLC groups. So we have one on like SAT support and looking through the new SAT materials. We have one for Portrait of a Graduate. We have one for AI. We have one on classroom expectations. So this year, I think I'm shooting for twice a trimester. We're going to have a small group of teachers who will be looking into AI and playing around with it, getting some data, and just leading the force when it comes to AI in our department. And my goal is for them to share what they've learned, share what they've seen. Yes.
When you talk about the PLCs,
Yes.
it's not clear to me whether you're talking about student groups or faculty groups.
Faculty groups. So PLCs are professional learning communities, and typically they review data or plan instruction, and trying to, because we have so many courses at the high school, as a way to integrate people that might not always work together, or to facilitate different types of collaboration. I wanted to include this because we're on the precipice of something really profound.
Got it. Thanks.
So for teacher use, and Pete and I has been really leading the charge with teacher use with AI since last year. These are more specific to what I've seen in my department. We've used it a lot for our personal use, especially when it came to trying to integrate the Portrait of a Graduate with our PBAs and our summative assessments. We had these things that were already living and breathing and we were using, and we wanted to incorporate some of the language on the rubrics that were made, not this past summer, the previous summer. And we were like, hey, I wonder if AI can kind of deal with this really clunky sentence. And it did, and it was wonderful. I've also used it to generate student groups, which makes my life super easy, because sometimes I just want kids to get into groups and I want to have that control, and it makes it a lot easier. We've used it to refine discussion or comprehension questions. Recently, the American literature teachers had AI create an essay for a prompt that we provided, and we had the students take a look at that piece and pick it apart. What was good, what was bad, what could they do better, what could they take away from that AI generated prompt. They've also done that in their personal narratives during junior year. And I think it's a really great tool for sample sentences for grammar and mechanic instruction. We know that grammar and mechanics is that's something that our students struggle with, and it's something that they're going to continue to struggle with just because that's the nature of grammar and mechanics. And so it's really nice to have something that's easy access that they can take a look at. The following slides are just the wide range of AI websites. Each one is hyperlinked to the website with just bulleted points on what it can do. You'll notice that not only is it beneficial for students, but it also is beneficial to teacher workflow. One of the things that I recently did, I plugged in a YouTube link and it created questions. And I was like, this is wonderful. So as I was watching the video, I was comparing to the questions. It was just really, really cool. A TED Ed talk. It was amazing. Here's some more. There's some of these AI websites provide leveled resources and can also take a resource and level it lower for students who might be learning English, who might need some additional supports or scaffolding. But you can also make the text more challenging as well. And in terms of the students, I want to preface this that this is a very tiny portion of our population. I surveyed my students, and I thought it was a really interesting group because they are sophomores. They're no longer new and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when it comes to the high school. They kind of learned a little bit about the ins and outs of high school, but they're not seniors who are far more independent. So I thought they would be a really interesting crew to survey because I think they would give the most accurate and honest feedback. And I did make sure that this the survey was anonymous, so they didn't have to worry about trying to impress me in the first few weeks of the school year. So overall, I was really happy to see that many of the students had not used AI on assignments. About 60% had used them, and about 40% had reported that they had used it in the past. And then breaking down those numbers, 72% said that they had only used it once or twice, 72% of that 40%. A quarter of that 40% said that they use it often, and only one student reported that they had used it all the time. I later asked what would be their reasons for using AI, and some of them used it to aid in comprehension. Some are using it to generate new ideas. Some just want to explore it, and you'll see that in the next slide, they will explain some of the cool ways that they've used it. Some use them to solve problems, some might assess and reflect on their work, and a very tiny population use it to create study materials. So this is the cool thing. I kind of gave them an other category in which they could report how they used AI. Some of them use it for baking or writing cards to maybe get some ideas of what to say to grandma or grandpa. Others have used it to explore image creation. There is a site called DALL-E, and that does artwork and image creation. Other folks have used it for world languages when other assistive technologies might not be helpful. A lot of the students reported that they use the Google add-on Grammarly in order to help with their grammar and sentence structure, and I am in that category as well. And there was one instance, and it was in social studies, where the teacher had the students research something about AI, and they told the students to have AI explain the point, and they got teacher permission for that AI use. This is something I was very, very happy about in terms of academic integrity and honesty and hard work. 97% of the kids that I surveyed stated that they never used AI generated work as their own. And many of these students are able to see the complexity of AI use. 97% said that it can be good, it can be bad, it depends on how you use it. And 3% of students think that AI has an exceedingly positive impact on education. Because I surveyed my 10th graders, I wanted to get an older kid perspective as well. So these are 2 seniors who answered very similar questions. Have you used AI in the past? How have you used it? How did you find it to be beneficial or otherwise?
I'm Mary Claire, I'm in the fourth grade.
I'm bad also.
So we use AI in Google during college grading, and it was like, it was good for generating ideas about what we write about in our life, but it also showed us what we had to do one writing, and otherwise it would
And then if you then use AI,
Oh, sorry,
It's okay.
trying to just increase this a little bit, sorry. There we go.
Mary Claire, I'm in the fourth grade.
I'm bad also. Great.
So we used AI in during college writing, and it was like, it was good for generating ideas about what we could write about in our life, but it also showed us that we had to be the ones writing, because otherwise it wouldn't sound like it came from our voice.
And then if you then use AI to give us examples of what kind of bad essays to edit, the essays weren't that great. And I think one of the reasons we might have done it was very easy to show, like, yeah, it's ChatGPT essays they're not going to get to a good grade. But it was helpful to like have essays to work out, I guess. Back last spring, I guess when it was kind of a big thing, I experimented around with it a little bit. I did I made up like Turing tests, made up different prompts that I could use. It was cool, but kind of got a hold of that after a little bit.
One of the ways I use it, like, still, like, is with kids I babysit. One of the things we'll do is we'll like type stuff into AI, and then we'll like read a bunch of story. And like, that's a good way to entertain them. And then also I use it to like generate ideas, and like I'll start giving it prompts, and then I'll read things, and I'll be like, oh, I like that fragment of a sentence. Maybe I can build off of that.
And to be clear, I gave them the lollipops after they answered those questions. But I thought it was really interesting, one student was thinking about artificial intelligence and Turing tests and whether or not it truly is AI, and then summarizing it in their babysitting jobs. And I think it just shows this video and this conversation was a great depiction of the wide range of abilities of AI and how it can be used in a positive and beneficial way when we give them the tools with which to use it positively.
I'm Mary Claire.
And then going back to our profile of a graduate, I see that if you look at this slide, everything that's in purple, I felt could be used with AI, or we could use AI to support building these capacities with our students. The only one I did not put in purple was alternate perspectives, but I'm also thinking about things from the English perspective. I want my students to be doing that on their own, but I'm certain that in the social studies world or the science world, that would be one of the things that they could see crossing over into our capacities. And just for some examples, students might be able to generate ideas for research and use AI to refine research questions, and that would fit in idea generation or inquiry. Other students might need to consider all options, avenues, and outcomes when determining their ultimate use of AI, and that would be decision making. So I can imagine almost all of these capacities having something that we could use AI to extend or benefit our students. And moving forward, we're going to continue to investigate AI. We're going to think about foundational and supplementary guidelines for use and misuse. And we just want to maintain an open and honest dialogue with our students, because anytime you try to hide anything, they're knowledgeable, they are worldly, our kids are smart, and they probably know this better than most teachers. So they certainly know it more than I do most times. So I think it's really important that we work with the kids to understand this and make sure that they know that it's ever changing, ever evolving. But if the last few years has told us anything, is that teachers are adaptable and we're ready to take on any challenge. So I can't imagine that we'll back down from all of this stuff too. And that's it. So if you guys have any questions,
I have one
yes.
When you have the sites and resources for instruction, are those the only ones that you allow them to use, or can they go?
Some of those links are more education or teacher based. In terms of AI use, it's a little bit tricky for students because I think you do have to be, and I would have to check in with our technology coaches and instructional coaches about the age. There's certain websites students can't use because the state mandates certain rules about their access. But in terms of AI usage, a lot of the times we're using it with them side by side. I'm not sure what sites the kids are using. We would probably start with some of these resources or just do the open ChatGPT.
Right,
And sit
because
side
that's
by
what I've
side.
heard.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're going to sit with a student and maybe come up with sentence starters or I'll put model essay in heavy quotes, we would probably use ChatGPT.
That's the kids that I've talked to. that's what
Yeah,
they-
yeah, I think that's the most obvious one. That's the one that when you think of AI, that's the direct word association. Yeah.
I had no idea Grammarly was considered AI.
It is, I think, I'm not sure when that kind of crossed that line into AI, but if you don't have just the extension, if you actually go to Grammarly.com, and if you have a paid subscription, it does do predictive text, and it's quite predictive, where you could just hop, skip, and a jump and have a whole essay.
Wow. Yeah, I've been using that for years. I have no idea.
I love Grammarly.
I love
I love Grammarly.
I find it interesting. Excuse me. I find it interesting that the faculty and the adults use it on their own.
Yeah, yeah. I used it last year to create a meal plan. I was doing a challenge with my gym and I needed to eat a certain amount of protein. And I was sick of eating chicken, and it gave me a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 5 days, and it reused the same material. So like if I had salmon one day, I would have salmon for lunch the next day. It was better at meal planning than I've ever been. It was insane.
What a great.
Well,
I'm gonna be doing that.
I would suggest it's better at a lot of things.
Yes, yeah,
Because it has access to all the information in the world. But,
correct.
you know, I understand that much of the effort in this time of transition is putting up gates and trying to police and maintain academic integrity,
Mhm.
and that makes sense. And it also makes sense to involve students in that conversation, but and as you said multiple times in your presentation, either directly or subtly, you're not going to be able to block this. The kids are going to use it, they're going to figure out how to use it, they'll get around it, so we better figure out how to use it.
Right.
Which leads to the next area, which is, I see huge potential in this in terms of teacher utility and being able to do some of the busy work that teachers spend a lot of their time at, that quite frankly, a computer or artificial intelligence can do a better, quicker job
Mhm.
and free teachers up, which then begs the conversation as we evolve. And I know, you're only representing your own experience in the English department. But having deeper conversations about how does teacher practice need to shift
Mhm.
and change?
Mhm.
Because the policing part, to my view, is falling within boundaries of, if we keep doing what we're always doing, then this is gonna be a problem around academic integrity. But, as an example, if we're looking at trying to plumb the depth of our students' thinking
Mhm.
in this page, then we might not want to send kids home with that assignment. We may want them doing that in front of us.
Right, correct. And I think in the past, since spring, we have had to make those decisions on the fly and. It's things that we never considered where we stop and think, no, we want our kids doing this in class with us. So that we can say, hey, I do wonder what AI is going to do for this, or I wonder what prompt will work, because part of both teacher and student usage, the ability to create a prompt that will generate the correct response is so challenging. That's a skill that teachers and students need to learn.
No question. And they took the words right out of it. And that's with AI, and that's, and that applies to a whole host of areas, but that skill set of acknowledging that AI is going to be here and in their careers and in their world, but to really harvest it and use it, you have to be very good at framing prompts.
Right.
And then the next level of prompts after the prompt, and then, and that's a skill set. In my humble opinion. Has its place in English instruction.
1000%. And I think that's something that teachers are constantly, I think back to getting my master's degree in education and how much questioning was a part of our instruction when we were going through our master's program. And I think it's just a different avenue that teachers have to go down now. Instead of just questioning, we have to think about questioning and prompts and questioning and AI. It's one of those things that you have to continuously work on, because if you get stagnant, the kids don't benefit as much.
And that's about shifting teacher mindset and perspective.
Yeah.
And as soon as we say that, from my perspective, then I look at, so what is the structure for that? So when I look at
Mhm.
PLCs, okay, that makes sense, but if it's a PLC where only those people that are particularly interested in
Right.
AI are gonna be there, then that is not a framework
Mhm.
for shifting
Right.
our thinking. So I just throw that out there.
Yeah, but my plan is to have them start to do some of that research and then tell them, on this day, I want you to split up and share what you know with the rest of the department. And truly, the intent is to use baby steps, and anytime we have to learn as we go, it can be very, very overwhelming in this profession, especially since the pandemic and distance learning. And I'm very mindful of folks moving at their own pace, and I can't change I think my department is very interested in the capabilities of AI, but I'm not looking to change anyone's mind, but I'm looking to expose them to new possibilities.
Well, I think one of the roads for that, just based on my professional experience, the teacher utilities. When you show teachers
Yeah.
how they can save time and work
Mhm.
and free them up for the things they really want to be doing,
Right,
it's a way to get people on.
right. That's a
Anyway.
great point.
I think also, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you don't. I already asked it. Do you find that it's more? Your teacher get busy, does it help, or do you feel? Is there overwhelming, or is there, to try and make sure that everything that they do is
I think
their own?
for teachers, the possibilities, and if I were to, even as someone who was looking at all of those sites, I was overwhelmed thinking about, okay, well, this one does this thing and this one does another thing. The options and choice can be overwhelming. I think if we were to say, play around with one website, then you would gain a skill set for that website. I think it's really just breaking down and taking that first step. There are teachers who have done that, and they're using it with professional integrity, and they're noticing that, oh, because this thing created questions that I then reviewed and said, this looks great, I was able to conference with the kid about their college essay, or I was able to write that letter of recommendation, or I was able to, you know, email that parent or follow up with that kid. So this isn't something that can take over the human aspect of teaching, which I think is really important, and that professional aspect of teaching, that we're experts in our content area. But there are 1,000 little things that we have to accomplish in a day, and if we can tick off a couple of those, then I think it frees up a lot of time.
So it is very beneficial to.
I can think that this would be extremely beneficial, with training and support and exposure and practice, trial and error.
I mean, as you were talking about it, I jotted a note saying it's almost like an on-demand coach that you
Yes.
can tap into if you're at home doing your lesson plans on a Saturday at, like, you know, midnight or whatever. Like, you don't have to, like, email your coach or like talk to a friend or like just figure, like, oh, Google it. Like, there's just, it's so much more powerful. So I think it's a lovely you know, way to use it. I think the PLC idea is an amazing way to provide a safe space for teachers to really kind of grapple with this, you know, and that culture climate within that PLC being what you're saying it is, which it should be, is that whole idea of like give and take, like somebody might know more about one thing than another, but letting everyone feel comfortable in that space. I think that that's everything.
Cool.
And that's how, you know, that's how we grow as educators. I also love how you're approaching this work with kids. I think, you know, I always think about like the teacher as a lead learner. You know, we're part of a community of learners and as teachers, and not a top-down approach. And when we start to police or we start to say, well, I know this, and so I'm going to teach you this, but really it's all shoulder to shoulder kind of work. That's so empowering for young adults and even kindergartners, you know, like it doesn't matter what age you are. So I think that it sounds to me like all of those different, you know, branches of what you're doing is really making a really sturdy, growing tree. And I guess there's probably a better way. I'll throw it into AI and let you know. But I just think that the approach and the thinking around how we can do this as a community is spot on and great. And I appreciate your work that you put into for your presentation. Thank you.
You know, I would say, I thank you for your presentation. Even before your presentation, when I saw that it was on the agenda, you know, for tonight. You know, because I've done some research on this topic myself, and school districts fall basically into three camps. Probably the biggest one is the ones that aren't doing anything about it, they're just kind of ignoring it.
Right.
There's another subgroup that's basically saying, we are going to close this down, we are going to keep it from access, we're going to, you know, this challenges everything we do, and they're going down that road. And then there's another group that says, you know, this is the future, this is here, it isn't, we're not stopping this.
Right.
What is the potential and how can we look at this and begin to have informed conversations about where, one, it might be valuable, and two, how do we help our students understand this new dynamic in the world, you know? So I'm very, you know, it's a long-winded way of saying I'm very pleased to see without pushing from the board that those discussions are happening in this district. You know, we're at the beginnings of it, as you know, most folks are. I mean, ChatGPT is not even a year old.
Right. And I do have to give credit to Pete Nye, because when we heard about ChatGPT, I mean, he dove right in, he played around with it, he spent a lot of time with this department thinking about prompting. He immediately was one of the front runners of, we have to figure out how to harness this for something beneficial for both teachers and students. And I think that really put a lot of people's fears to rest, because we saw someone who's a leader at the school say, no, this is really cool, let me show you.
I think that overall, that's something that I think is unique about Madison, is that we're not looking backwards or trying to protect what it used to be, but always looking forward and pushing forward for our kids. And I think that all of the educators in this room are dedicated to doing that. That's just part of what they do and how they think and how they create. And that's a big piece of I think the fabric of Madison Public Schools. So I'm always excited when I ask a question to a department and they are ready with an answer because they're forward thinking. And it's like, of course you have thought about it, and of course you have things in place and in mind. And I don't sit there and demand that. That's something they push into and lean into. And I think the next presentation will show that too. It's throughout the system. So thank you, Selena.
Thank you, Selena.
Now pretend it's Thursday.
I would have been here doing this for him.
Yeah. Jim Jason stuff. And now I'd like to welcome Catherine Hart and Kim and Jen. They are presenting what we call a Madison experience. And I went over this a little bit at the retreat last week, that we have all different levels of assessments that we give kids. This is kind of the top of the top. So this kind of assessment is integrated with various content areas. It's multidisciplinary. It looks after the profile of graduate capacities as the primary target. And it's centered around topics that the teachers really develop over time to really go deeply into those standards. So it's a deep dive. It takes several days usually, and every kid participates. So we have a Madison experience in grade 2, in grade 4, in grade 6, and now in grade 8. So thank you for all your hard work. And of course, timing is everything. They kind of wrap their heads around developing a Madison experience, and they captured exactly what we're talking about. So turn it over to Catherine.
Thank you for having us. So we met this.
Oh, you've got the clicker, right? Just click it. It's attached. There you
Oh, thank you. That's great. So we knew that we needed to create a Madison experience for grade 8. And we knew that grade 6, being in the same building, was very structured in its approach and developmentally appropriate. So, and we knew when they were heading up to the high school is much more independent when they're leaving. So we knew that we needed that perfect middle ground of providing some level of structure, but also some independence and some element of choice for our students when we're designing this. So I put it out to the staff and I said, anybody who's interested, let me know. And we got a group together, I think maybe even 3 times over the summer. And we started right from scratch of what do we know about the other Madison experiences and the other grade levels, and what do we want to design that is meaningful for our students, but gives us some good information about who they are as well. So as you can imagine, that brainstorming session took a while, and we went through a whole process of narrowing it down to the topic of artificial intelligence. And I think that there was absolutely no pressure, by the way, from Gail. She didn't even know when we were doing this. So when she called me and said, what are we doing with the Madison experience? And I said to her, she's like, really? But this was 100%. Well, it is timely, right? Because we all know as educators that it was things that we've been talking about. We did a faculty meeting in May or June last year with Mike Kiefer, who gave us some really very general information at that time. And we know that people have been playing on their own, myself included. And we knew that it was a high interest topic for kids, which is exactly what we wanted for the Madison experience. So I think to me, what's most important is the high interest that it's designed by teachers. And we're looking forward to doing this. Just so you know, we haven't done this yet. We'll be doing it in November. We have a plan where it'll be one day in the morning that all of our students will do this together. We'll be using not just 8th grade teachers, but coordinators, related arts staff. That will all be a part of running a group on artificial intelligence and the work that you'll hear more about today from Kim and from Jen. And as we look at it, and so Stephen, we're in that group number 3 that you mentioned, they're embracing it, we're right there. And I think just on a personal note, I'm actually going to a state workshop in 2 weeks on how do you make AI beneficial for administrators and teachers. So I will be bringing that back, sharing with the administrative colleagues, but also obviously with the staff as well. Because if it can make our lives easier, why wouldn't we take advantage of that? So as I set the stage for students, where some of them know what it is, some of them are using it. Some of them, I honestly don't really know if they have a good understanding of what AI is. So this is the key information that we'll be sharing with them, really that it's not just a computer program that you can plug into, but it's capable of thinking and learning. And when you actually pause and start to think about that, that's mind-blowing. But it can perform a task that typically a human would be doing, whether that's a human in a store, a human in a classroom, a teacher, that it can take the place of some of those things. And no matter what, it has a big impact on lives. And the information that we'll be sharing with them will show that it can have a negative impact, but also a positive impact. So we give them the pros and cons, we give them a lot of different information that you'll hear about. And the goal is for them to make their own judgment. So tying back to what Selena said, knowing the time and the place, taking their morals into consideration, their own values, and when is the right time to have the ethics in place to use it or not to use it. So we know that it'll be a learning curve for everybody, but right at the bottom there, our job is really to help them get a better understanding of the world around them and to use the information that they gather from this Madison experience in order to make an informed decision of how it can help them to be successful in life.
So I just wanted to bring your attention to the quote on the top right. AI is a tool, the choice about how it gets deployed is ours. I think that quote does a good job of emphasizing what Catherine was saying, which is we're really trying to create an experience where we're not nudging them in one way, one direction or the other in terms of how they should look at AI or think about it. We try to collect a variety of sources for them to investigate that is both informative, but also shows them the pros and the cons, and then let them develop their own opinions about this topic. Just to give you a little bit of background, Catherine mentioned a little bit, the me experience is going to happen over 2 days. There'll be a week gap between day 1 and day 2. Each day will be about a 2-hour time block. And the kids will be put into small groups of about 12-ish kids per group, with a teacher facilitating the group activities. All 8th graders will be doing this all at the same time. The first day will be November 9th, and the second day will be November 16th. I'm going to talk about day 1, and then Jen will talk about day 2. So this slide captures what we're doing on day 1. The left side of the slide is the part of day 1 where they're really having a common experience. And the right side of the slide is showing you the part of the experience where there's more student choice. So trying to create a balance between what their me experience was like in 6th grade and what their me experience will be like when they get to the high school. To make sure that everyone's kind of understanding AI with some foundational information that we all have in common, all the students are going to watch an introductory video together. And that gives them just a very brief introduction to what AI is. Then the students are going to independently generate questions that they would like to find the answers to about AI. And those questions could be based on the introductory video that we all watch, or it could be based on their previous knowledge and experiences with AI. And then to investigate AI, we're gonna all analyze the same first article. And this one is more informative, where it presents what AI is and how it operates, so that the kids are using some common language and understanding. That's the common experience part. And then when we move on to step number 4, the right-hand side, this is where student choice comes in. So in addition to that first article that they're all analyzing, they're going to be given a list, like a menu of sources to explore. All of those sources are organized into 3 categories: informative, expressive, and experiential. The next slide that I'll show you in a minute gives you some examples of those kinds of sources. And the students have to choose 2 sources from each of those 3 categories. So in total, they're analyzing 6 sources, but which 6 sources is totally up to them. They could also analyze more than 6 if they so desire. And to help facilitate that analysis, they're going to be filling out a task organizer that we're going to provide them. Because they're really looking at a variety of different kinds of sources, not just reading. After they're done doing that analysis and an exploration of the sources, they're going to go back to their initial questions and do some revising. So now that they've learned more about AI than they might have known initially, how might your questions change? And that's the part that the teachers are going to be analyzing. We're going to be looking at their initial questions compared to their revised questions, and we're going to be using the inquiry rubric on the Portrait of a Graduate to look at that part of the process. And that's one of the things that we're emphasizing in this project, is that it's not always about the end product, but it's about the process to get to the end. Everyone's always like, well, what do I have to do? What do I have to make? What do I hand into you as the teacher? You know, and this is really emphasizing all of the steps leading up to the final product. So that's why we decided to focus on the question asking element of this experience. And then the last step of day 1 is the students as small groups get to select questions that they would like to ask an AI expert, which will be the first thing that happens on day 2 that Jen will talk about shortly. Next slide shows you a couple of examples of the kinds of sources that the students are picking from. The informative ones can be a variety of different types. Some of them are articles, some of them are videos, and some of them are graphics. Primarily giving them information about AI, but also showing people's positives and negative experiences using it or trying it out. Experiential sources are more interactive. So some of these are actually AI generated sources and some of them are human generated sources. There are a couple of quizzes that the kids can take where they try to identify the piece of art that was created by a human versus one that was generated by AI, just to see all of the different ways in which AI is being used. And then the third type of source is expressive. So this is more artistic in nature. So there's poems and political cartoons and art pieces, again, AI generated or human generated about this topic.
So there's about almost exactly a week between the 2 events, between day 1 and day 2. And the reasoning for that is for, you know, a couple of logistical reasons. Just in case somebody is absent on day 1, we can kind of catch up with that student and make sure that they have that experience so that they can participate in day 2. And also to give those students that are, you know, go-getters that do want to go beyond the sources that we provide, if they want to take this home and run with it, because I have a list of kids in my head that would do that, then they have the opportunity to do that. So it kind of gives us a little like breathing space. And so when day 2 picks up, it'll be a similar schedule. It'll be a day that's just for 8th grade. And the first thing that will happen is the questions that were collected at the end of day 1, those will be sent to our AI expert. And we have a couple of in-house people, but I think Catherine was hoping to possibly cross paths with somebody at the conference that you're heading to. So we might have somebody not in-house. So that's kind of one thing that we have to put that piece of the puzzle into place. But
since this is the pilot year, if it ends up being somebody in-house, we can just kind of learn from what happens and how it goes, and it'll give us more time to kind of procure somebody that could be an AI expert on a larger level than just our Madison level. So in the morning, they'll have that event where they'll have an opportunity to hear answers to the questions. Within that week, we have time to compile and make sure that we don't have a lot of overlap. We can kind of like compose the questions into categories and make sure that we're not just repeating ourselves. So we'll start with that. Then the students will start preparing for a roundtable discussion. And so they're going to be coming to the roundtable having seen many different sources. And so one of the things that's going to happen at the roundtable is they're going to get to have say their piece, throw in their 2 cents. They're going to get to express themselves, but also they're going to benefit from hearing from the other students that looked at things that they didn't look at. So we'll see like how effectively that plays out in real time, but that's kind of our goal with the roundtable discussion. So we're going to give them time to plan to support their points and just kind of get ready for that. Then they're going to receive some instructions where they have a setup for the roundtable discussion, and I'm just going to kind of take a half step back. All the students are going to be evaluated using the inquiry rubric from the profile of the graduate. But then for a second area of evaluation, they're going to get to choose which they'd like to be evaluated in. So there's alternate perspectives or collective intelligence. And so we need to spend some time with them on day 2, going through that rubric and saying, which of these 2 would you be interested in reflecting on, being evaluated in, and they can choose that second capacity. And the first one is they don't really have a choice in that, but this one I do. So once they make that choice, we're just going to kind of go into our roundtable discussion. The groups are going to be smaller than a normal class size. So our goal is around 12 students with any teacher. I mean, they could end up with a teacher they might have a teacher that they don't have. And so that person is going to be facilitating the discussion. And in our behind the scenes stuff for our teacher guided instructions for those facilitators, they have some questions that they can kind of drop into the conversation just in case there's a bit of a lull. Very similar to how we implement a Socratic seminar. And then once they kind of go through that process, hear from other students, share what they want to share, they're going to compose their final thoughts. So this is kind of their, what are you turning in? Where are we going with this? It doesn't have to be their final thoughts forever. We'll make that clear. But just right now, having experienced these 2 special days, being able to interact with an AI expert, what are you thinking? Where are you at right now? And so they're going to compose that and also reflect using that self-assessment rubric. Oh, and here's a little bit more about the ways that they're going to be evaluated. So like I said, the inquiry is something that's going to be common for all students. And then depending on what they choose, we're looking at collective intelligence and alternate perspectives for those 2. What we're going to do is spend some time, and this is again a look behind the scenes for what we do as teachers, but we need to calibrate our scoring and just our evaluation. So we plan to carve out some time for us to debrief the whole experience from our angle, and also to make sure that we're all evaluating the students in the same way, to be fair. We're going to track the data so that after we can kind of say, all right, what did we find out from the students as far as their, where are they at with their inquiry process? And of course, I'd love to see, I'm curious, who's going to pick what for those 2 other categories. Is it going to be all alternate perspectives? So we're going to track that data as well. This is the pilot year, which we kept saying to ourselves this summer when we were working. It was one of those things where we had to just take the pressure off to be perfect rate on the first attempt. There's probably going to be a lot to be learned, which is fine. And so after, we're definitely going to just kind of take a look at what happened and tailor it for the next attempt next year too. And also we want to survey the students to get their input because they will definitely tell us what they think. And yeah, we'll see what they said. Oh, sorry, this is just, yes.
So I think just to wrap up, Selena had given the big picture, the overview. This is one snippet of what we're planning for with 8th grade. I think we're really excited about it. I have 2 teachers here today, but it's a whole team. They have been absolutely instrumental in designing this, a lot of thought and effort going into it. And we're looking forward to seeing how it turns out. And as Jen said, we'll come back and we'll revisit and say, what do we need to tweak? What do we need to do differently? What should we keep? So I think as it says, I think it'll be highly engaging. I think it's complex, not only for students, but for adults as well. It's extremely relevant in what we're doing in this day and age. And it does bring every subject matter together. So there were our goals that we started off with at the beginning. And as we circle back to now, I think with what we've designed is ready to accomplish those goals.
I think this is like a great example of the difference between a standardized test item and the depth of knowledge and the depth of knowledge that we're expecting our kids to be able to do and demonstrate. So, you know, I know you know all about depth of the knowledge now. You're experts on that. But, you know, so impressive that the team comes together and is open-minded enough to really go deeply into an area that everybody doesn't feel expert in themselves. So, you know, that's a lot of risk for our teaching professionals as well as for the kids. So, you know, thank you all. Catherine, it is true. Like, you know, I was like, what are you doing in the Madison experience? Like, hey, that's so good.
And it was actually a lot of like fun when we were looking for the sources, because we were like, oh my gosh, AI can do this, like we should play it. Like, and everybody was like, oh my God, there's this and this. So it was like we were all engaged.
Yeah. Like, this is definitely the good topic.
Yeah.
Makes me want to be a Madison public school educator. Really, I mean, it's just amazing how you're modeling all of what we're hoping for the portrait of the graduate in all of those areas. You're modeling it for kids and really just learning together, and there's joy in that, and and it creates traction, and it's all the things, and I'm just so amazed and jealous with the board and the library job.
I think it's great. I mean, it's overwhelming to me, but I think it's great. I'm gonna start checking around and see what I can get off of that. It's great.
And, you know, I love the commitment, the deep learning, and letting kids emerge themselves in a topic. And I love the separation between some individual work and then going into group work. I see a couple processes over the 2 days that I think are particularly valuable. You know, germane to the conversation we had prior to your presentation. One is the whole business of formulating questions and then gaining more information and refining those questions, because that's right in line with what we're talking about in terms of the importance of prompting and being able to be focused and specific, because what you will get back is in direct relation to that. The other thing, you know, just because I think this way, it's like Catherine doesn't have to go to the workshop to get the expert. Okay. The expert's right here. Take those questions and you will find there's an AI expert for kids to be able to see that your initial question gets this kind of response. And a more fully developed question gets this kind of response. Because the fact is, you know, kids might get a kick out of seeing how it actually works and how they impact and control that process, just I throw that out there for your.
It's not always accurate, though. That's one of the articles that we've got. It quotes a book that was never written.
But that's, but wouldn't that be rich,
Yes, for sure.
you know?
We'll try that, Stephen, and we'll get back to you.
Because there was,
You know, I love that they're doing that, and, you know, I hope we get the opportunity to hear how it went, and, you know, and what the experience was like, so. Great to get it on video.
I know. We will.
Anyhow, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you all
Thank you.
very much. Poor Bill has to.
Great stuff. Awesome. Well, unless we have any other comments or anything, we will adjourn at 6:30. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.